Aloha, this is Professor Porter. These are the Federal Rules of Evidence. We're into hearsay and essentially definitional hearsay, but we're really talking about the responses available to the proponent because the opponent's still sticking with the same script, objection hearsay, using that definition, the foundational requirements under 801C to say objection hearsay, I have an out-of-court statement, truth of the matter asserted. For the responses available to the proponent, we have some options. You can argue the definition in this first panel to the left, or you can, in the middle where we are now, argue that you have your own foundational requirements for not hearsay defined, or sometimes called exemptions to the hearsay rule. And for later videos, we'll talk about the far panel to your right, the exceptions under 803, 804, and the residual exception under 807. So what we're really talking about is some of these instances that are not hearsay defined, where essentially the proponent can say, I know you have your foundational requirements, I have mine, and that meets the definition of not hearsay. So the court should overrule your objection and admit the statement, allow the testimony because it meets not hearsay as defined. And today we're going to talk about inconsistent statements, prior inconsistent statements. It's important to pause here and think inconsistent statements are always going to be admissible for some limited purpose, for some limited reason. Because if you recall, one of my top 5 answers of why something, if I'm the proponent, is not hearsay because it doesn't meet the foundational requirements, because it's not offered for the truth of the matter asserted, is because someone says something, 2 different things on different days. That is, they have inconsistent statements. So it's not being offered for the truth, it's being offered to impeach. Well, just think, when I make that argument and I'm successful in making that argument, the court should let that statement in only for the purpose of impeachment, not for the truth of what's in quotes, only to show that this person says 2 different things on 2 different days, not for the truth of what was said prior or the truth of what was said in court. Here, we're talking about a little fancier version of inconsistent statements. If we dial up that instance of the prior statement where it has some enhanced reliability, as you'll see from the requirements, then we're not only going to let it in to impeach, and you can argue credibility in closing, we're also going to let it in for its truth. The prior statement can come in for its truth if we have some of these enhanced elements. Sometimes I call this the prior inconsistent statements, the fancy kind, because then you get both impeachment and arguments based in the truth of the matter asserted. And it really has to do, it breaks down to 801 D1A, prior inconsistent statements by the witness. It breaks down to something has to happen here and something has to be going on with a prior statement. So first, as it relates to here, our declarant is on the stand. The person who said it before is now on the stand now. And if they're on the stand now, they're testifying at trial, and most likely they're subject to cross. But look out for times when, for some reason, cross is cut short or made ineffectual, right? You have to be testifying in full, testify at trial, and be subject to cross. Not guaranteed for an effective cross or a meaningful cross, just subject to cross. That's what has to happen. So just like out-of-court identifications under 801 D1C, capital C, where we would have to have the declarant who made the out-of-court identification is testifying, subject to cross, and then they're talking about that prior identification. Here, we need a declarant that's testifying, subject to cross, and now some foundational requirements that have to do with the past statement. And here it is. As to the past statement, this is what makes it fancy. This is what makes it enhanced. So imagine I could be testifying at trial. I could be subject to cross. And if I just wrote an email to a friend and I want to say something different today than that email to a friend, well, they might be able to bring that up. They can say, listen, on one day when you emailed a friend, you said the answer was 35. Today in court, you said the answer was 42. 35, 42 says different things on different days. We can introduce this. So I can say, didn't you say in an email to a friend sometime before this event, Porter the witness, didn't you say 35 in the email to the friend? Objection hearsay. Your Honor, this is not hearsay. It's not offered for the truth of the matter asserted. Instead, it's just offered for impeachment, just to make a credibility argument about Porter. So any different statement from the past can come in to impeach. Here, look at, we want something a little fancier. So the first part is the same. It's got to be inconsistent. 35 is inconsistent with 42. 2 different numbers, 2 different things. But look at the extra stuff, the fancy stuff. Given under penalty of perjury, given during a proceeding or deposition. So if I was actually sitting down, took an oath to tell the truth, had some type of proceeding, a prior hearing, something where we have some enhanced reliability, and I was basically sworn to tell the truth because I could be prosecuted for perjury. I have done a penalty of perjury. If it's under those types of circumstances to include a deposition and it's inconsistent, then I get to say not only this is not offered for the truth, it's offered for impeachment. Let me argue credibility to the jury. I get to say this qualifies as not hearsay defined under 801 D1 capital A. This is the fancy kind. This, because I have this declarant here, testifying, subject to cross, and the prior statement that is inconsistent was in these enhanced reliable situations, like a deposition, a proceeding, and under penalty of perjury, I get to argue that it comes in through this window, that it's not hearsay. And the critical difference is, if it's not hearsay, it comes in for truth and impeachment. So just imagine, I'm saying 42 at trial, and at my deposition, where I was under oath and under penalty of perjury, I said 35. Now at trial, I say 42. I have inconsistent again. So what happens is, at this trial, I'm the declarant, Porter's the declarant, I'm testifying at trial, I'm subject to cross, I say the words 42. On cross-examination, they want to get into my prior statement. They want to get into that deposition. Not only is it inconsistent, like my email to my friend, now it has some fancy elements. Now it was at a deposition. Now it was under penalty of perjury. So they get to get into, didn't you, at your deposition, say a different number? Objection, hearsay. Same objection. The opponent does the same thing regardless of the reliability or enhanced reliability of the prior statement. But now the proponent gets to do something different. Instead of the proponent limiting themselves to just a credibility argument, limiting themselves just for the other purposes of impeachment and not for the truth of the matter asserted, now they get to say, Your Honor, this is not hearsay defined under 801 D1A. This is an inconsistent statement. And I have my own foundational requirements. Porter is the declarant. He's here testifying and he's subject to cross. This statement is inconsistent because 35 is inconsistent with 42. And that prior statement has enhanced reliability of being given during a deposition and under penalty of perjury. So therefore, not only are we going to allow this evidence in, but we don't need any limiting instruction. We don't need any instruction under 105. It's coming in for its truth. So when I get to closing, when the other side gets to closing and they get to talk about Porter's testimony, they get to say, you know what the truth was? 35, that prior statement, because we can use it for its truth. And you know what? Porter says different things on different days, so don't trust what he said as it relates to 42 versus 35 or anything else that he said. So I would argue credibility and I'd argue the truth of the prior statement. That's the bonus you get for letting it in under these fancy circumstances. Another way to look at it, look out for memory, feigned memory, claims of privilege, if there's some reason why you're cutting cross-examination short. But here's another way of looking at it. So something's happening. We got two foundational requirements. What's going on today at trial? We need the declarant on the stand. So it can't be Randy's the witness and we're talking about an inconsistency in Doug's testimony. Nope. Randy's prior testimony, Randy's inconsistent statement, and Randy's the witness. So for these 801 D1, not hearsay defined exemptions, we need declarant and witness to be the same person. I'm talking about something I said in the past. And then again, it's got to have these fancy elements: under oath, penalty of perjury, trial hearing, or other proceedings. So look out for testimony at a different hearing in trial, some earlier hearing. Look out for depositions. Look out for testimony under oath. That means there's a reason they're telling you that in the question. Maybe the reason is because the question may turn on whether it can be used for its truth or just to show that somebody says different things on different days so we can argue impeachment, argue credibility. So here's the big difference. All statements that are inconsistent, we can bring up in cross-examination. I might be able to get into the prior statement like my email to a friend, but it's limited. Impeachment is a limited use. I can't argue the truth of that statement before in the email to a friend. I can just argue that this person says different things on different days, so you should take their testimony with caution. Maybe you don't want to believe them. Maybe they're a liar. When I get the fancy kind, when I have 801D1A inconsistent statement, an enhanced inconsistent statement, an inconsistent statement with some bells and whistles on it, I get to use it at what's called substantive evidence. That means I get both. I can use it for impeachment and make that argument. I can also use that prior statement for its truth. You said it in a deposition. You said something inconsistent today. Normally, I can't just go to a deposition, right? I can't just go to a prior statement and say, hey, at your deposition, didn't you say? Objection, hearsay, sustained. But here, once you testify inconsistently, once you said 35 before, you say 42 today, now you've opened up the door. You've opened up my ability to go to that prior deposition that has these fancy elements of the oath, penalty of perjury, that it was in a proceeding or at a deposition. I get to get into the prior statement, the 35, and I use it for substantive evidence. It can come in for its truth. I can argue to the jury at the end, not only that you're a liar, not only that you should consider it for credibility and impeachment, but that consider his testimony was 35, the truth of what was said in that prior statement.